Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1183, 1183, July the 7th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's been going on over this past 24 hours. Get a drink first. Got a little frog in my throat. Okay. Well, yesterday we had Chuck Grassley sending out a tweet basically saying that if there are no prosecutions by Durham until after the elections, it would be sad. He says that Durham should be producing some fruit of his labor. Yes, and, I think it's a timely tweet, but I feel, I know where he's coming from. A lot of people are extremely frustrated. I know I am. We've watched this thing play out now for, think about this. We're going on, coming up on 4 years here pretty soon that we've been watching this thing, beginning with the shenanigans that took place in 2016. We have had to go through the Mueller witch hunt. We've had to go through the Ukraine hoax. We've had to go through all this. And, I guess you have to say that Durham's only really been on the job since May. It's only been a criminal investigation since about October of this past year. So in terms of the investigation compared to the length of time Mueller was doing his witch hunt, and this is an actual real investigation, a real conspiracy with a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts here. So in that respect, I kind of understand, why things are taking as long as they are. But I do agree with Chuck Grassley's sentiments that absolutely there has to be prosecutions before the election. Absolutely. The American people must know before they go and vote again exactly what was done to Trump and his campaign, and then after he won the election, what was done to his administration by the Democrats and the deep state. This must be known before we vote again. And I certainly believe that Attorney General Barr knows this. I've watched too many interviews with him to think that he's so naive that he doesn't understand what the general mood is of the country and what the general mood is of a lot of people who are watching this very closely. And, Maria Bartiromo has held his feet to the fire. I've seen a couple interviewers on Fox News hold his feet to the fire and ask him some real, straight questions. So, and framing the questions around this general narrative that, hey, there's a lot of people watching this who are very, very angry. They don't know why, up to this point, despite all the evidence that's come out from the Huckleberry Horowitz reports, 5 of them, as well as all the other information that's come out, documents have been released. Everyone knows that there was a criminal conspiracy here to first keep Trump from winning the election, and then once he won the election, to destroy him as a person and as a president, and even to get him impeached, thrown out of office, whatever. Clearly there's an ongoing criminal conspiracy, and it needs to come to a conclusion here soon. But the people who committed these crimes need to be brought to justice. And again, Attorney General Barr has signaled in multiple interviews that he expects Durham to be wrapping up his investigation by the end of the summer, and that, if people broke the law, they're going to be held accountable, and that means, for most people, that means they're going to be prosecuted. So I assume that we all still have to be having some faith in Attorney General Barr that his word is good. And we already know that Durham is a tough prosecutor. Seems like a law and order type of guy. We know he's not a Democrat. We know that. We know that he's had several new U.S. attorneys added to his team, including this U.S. attorney from Missouri, Mr. Jensen, who's clearly a guy who gets results. So, there certainly are a lot of indications that we are going to see at least the first round of perpetrators charged with crimes here before the election. I have been under at least the impression myself that they would want to do this before the general election begins. I think it would be, well, I mean, I guess I'll take the indictments anytime they come, but my general thoughts are, I mean, if I was the Attorney General, once the general election kicks off, which is after the conventions are over, and you get to like that very end of August, first week of September, I mean, that's when the debates happen. That's when people start paying attention. That's when things really heat up. The months of September and October are the 2 months when the election is really there. And it would just seem to me that that would be a bad time to drop indictments. I think that you need to do that before the beginning of September, when the final stretch, home stretch for the race is in full swing. For a lot of reasons, I think that you have to do it. I mean, it doesn't mean that Durham has to be completely done and totally wrapped up with everything before he does anything. I mean, this is not how things have to work. It's not how things work with the Mueller witch hunt. Mueller started with Flynn, and while he's working Flynn, you get the Flynn indictment, and then you get the charges on Cohen, then you get the stuff with Manafort. I mean, so, I mean, it's not like Durham has to come out and dump it all and indict everybody he's going to indict all at once, and it's one big failed swoop. I mean, I don't think that at all. I think that there's obviously a handful of people right now that we absolutely know for sure committed perjury, lied to Congress, lied under oath, falsified documents, lied to the FISA court. I mean, there's a handful of people we know already did that. He can come out and indict these people. Most important, come out and indict these people in at least ways, be able to give us a basic explanation to the American people of what happened in 2016 and afterwards, even after Trump was elected. I mean, this is critical. It's hugely critical to the election. And so I agree with Grassley that it absolutely has to happen before the election. That, doesn't mean we have to get the entire thing. Doesn't mean that, he has to drop every name and he has to indict everybody and he has to have the whole thing figured out. But certainly there needs to be indictments before the election. I think that's got to happen. And I suspect if it does not happen that I suspect that there's going to be tremendous backlash. There's always the chance that Trump could lose. And if Trump loses the election, all these people get away with it. And again, I get, it's just my gut feeling that Barr understands the gravity of the situation, that if these people pull this off and walk scot-free, the very next time Democrats are in power, you can kiss this country goodbye. Because they will have no limits whatsoever on what they will do to stay in power and make sure no Republican ever wins a presidential election again. I mean, it's the stakes are so high, and I don't think that Durham and Barr and these other U.S. attorneys working on this live in such a bubble that they're not aware of this. I mean, they have friends, they talk to people, they have to be aware of the gravity of the situation surrounding this coup. And I think that they have enough common sense themselves to know that you cannot allow this election to take place without first explaining to people what happened in the previous election and how we got here, because it did a lot of damage to Trump. You still have people out there pushing the Russia collusion thing. You still have all this stuff going on. Trump had the first 2 years of his presidency literally stolen from him. And I just think it would be the greatest miscarriage of justice for Barr to allow the election to come and go without, at least getting some of the initial criminals charged and giving us some idea of what took place. I mean, you can continue after that. You know, you have one round of indictments while you continue to work through and resolve things. And there's nothing that says that you can't, there's nothing that says you can't arrest people, prosecute people while you're continuing to learn more about the investigation. So I understand there's been hindrances because of coronavirus and whether or not they can seat grand juries and all these other things. But this, there's a lot of excuses there. They're able to do these grand juries. They can do them by teleconference. I mean, there's ways to get this done if they want to get it done. But yeah, I mean, Grassley's right. Something absolutely must happen before the election, or that I think there's going to be tremendous backlash, if not against Barr. So yeah, I mean, that's very true. But I understand Grassley's being impatient. But quite honestly, Grassley is the head of a committee that has full subpoena power. And he and Lindsey Graham over there heading up those committees in the Senate a long time ago could have been subpoenaing people, bringing them in publicly for questioning, and they could have done a lot more to bring a lot more public awareness to what happened and bring some pressure. But, they're just not very aggressive. They're just not very aggressive. And so, I mean, on one hand, I see Grassley's, concerned, but on the other hand, the Senate Republicans, this has been going on for a long time, and the Senate Republicans flat out have not produced. Let's put it that way. Well, it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. And she is on suicide watch and is being monitored. You think? Let me see. Now, I don't know if Attorney General Barr watches my videos. Probably not. But just in the long shot case that he is watching my video, let me give you some really good advice, Attorney General Barr. Interview her now. Now. Do not wait. You do not have time to wait. She's there. She's in New York. You should be interviewing her now. Get it all. I'm sure she's ready to either talk or clam up, one of the two. I'm pretty sure there's no indecision in her mind about what she should do at this point. She's been under arrest since Thursday in a jail. That's a long time for her. 4 or 5 days for her is a long, long time to be in the lockup. But you got her there in New York now. And I certainly wouldn't let her sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks before you get in there and ask some questions. Man, I would have been waiting for her to arrive in New York. I would have had my investigators waiting for her. And I wouldn't have the normal prison personnel watching her, and to hell with surveillance cameras. I would have physical eyeballs on her. I would have 2 U.S. Marshals on her, working rotating shifts. 2 sets of eyes on her 24/7. And I would have interviewed her the minute she hit the jail cell. Time's not on your side, Mr. Barr. Well, it looks like Governor Kemp of Georgia has declared an emergency in the state and is deploying as many as 1,000 National Guard troops to protect state buildings in Atlanta. This coming after a weekend of unprecedented violence that led to the death of an 8-year-old girl. Now, of course, in and around all this, you have another liberal mayor. Now, Kemp is a Republican. Georgia is pretty much a Republican state. It's kind of a purple state, I guess. It leans a little more Republican, but of course you have a Democratic mayor. And of course this particular mayor, Keisha Bottoms, the Atlanta mayor, like all these liberal mayors, have so badly failed with this whole situation. And the thing is, you see, as these liberal mayors are failing, you would think they would learn from the other liberal mayors who have failed and not, repeat what they're doing. But these people, when I say they're stupid, meaning they're incapable of learning. These people are incapable of learning. Even a half-wit would be able to learn from this. I mean, just watching what happened in Seattle or Minneapolis should, I mean, if you're the mayor of Atlanta, you watch what happened in Minneapolis, and then you look at what happened in Seattle, that should be enough of a educational experience that you would say, wow, well, that didn't work out very well. Maybe I'll try something different. Now, keep in mind, this mayor in Atlanta, Keisha Bottoms, she is on the short list well, I would say was on the short list to be a VP for Biden. But her handling of these things in Atlanta, especially now that you've had an 8-year-old girl killed right there at that intersection where the Wendy's was, where all the stuff went down originally, she comes out and makes this speech, that this she says that the shoot 'em up has got to stop. Isn't it extraordinary how these liberal mayors literally cheerlead for the riots, praise the rioters, essentially come out and say that they're justified in what they're doing, tell the cops to stand down, don't allow the cops to do their job, and then when the shit finally hits the fan, she's asking the cops now to do their job and fix the problem. Well, now it's so out of control, the cops can't fix the problem. You need reinforcements, the National Guard, and the governor is sending them in. And I don't think the mayor asked for them. It's been so badly mishandled. I mean, this is a brick through the window theory. It's not, you don't have to be a genius to understand this. If you allow someone to throw a brick through the window and they get away with it, guess what? A whole lot more bricks are coming through a whole lot more windows. I mean, you almost empower the criminals. I mean, it's open season on the citizens. You tell the cops to stand down. You talk about defunding the police. And, of course, we had all these cops in Atlanta getting the blue flu. I mean, they're just driving around now just collecting a paycheck. They're going, man, why should I go put my life in danger? Why should I risk public ridicule? Why should I go try to apprehend a suspect knowing good and well I'll end up on a Twitter feed somewhere? I'll probably get fired for just trying to do my job. No way. Screw that. I just can ride around my police car and get paid and not subject myself to any of this. So after her complete and utter failing as a mayor to deal with the situation in the first place, to allow cops to do their job, now that she's got her tit in a ringer, she's asking for the cops to come and pull her nuts out, chestnuts out of the fire. I mean, this is just typical liberalism. I mean, it doesn't get any worse. These people are incapable of learning. I want to hear these left-wing nutcase mayors like her, like Keisha Bottoms, come out and say, you know what? I effed up. And I've learned my lesson. I gave these people the benefit of the doubt. I let them go with the protest. I told the cops to stand down. I gave them some space to let them get it out of their system. I thought that would be a good course of action. I thought in a couple days it would all die down and we'd get back to normal. But apparently I was wrong. Apparently President Trump was right. If you let these people get away with crime, they'll commit more of it. And they'll bring their friends. And the guys from the town next to you, they'll come too. Because it's open season. It's a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all. That was a good Ted Nugent tune, by the way. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Yep, it's a free-for-all. That's exactly what it is. In these blue cities, it's just take what you want. Do what you want. Because your liberal mayor doesn't have the stones to stop it. And then after it all goes to hell, then they're looking around, looking around for the cops to come and save them. And she's on the short list for Biden to be a VP for Biden. I assume she's not now, but who knows? And this is what you're seeing being repeated all over the country in these blue cities, where these liberal mayors And it's not just these failings. It's you look at the crime rates, you look at the educational systems, you look at the poverty, you look at the drugs, the prostitution, the rapes, you look at the shitholes that these urban areas are. Many of these places have been run by liberal Democrats for 50, 60, 70 years. They failed decade after decade after decade. Trillions of dollars thrown at the problem. Trillions. And look what they got. But people continue to reelect them. Keisha Bottoms will probably get reelected. So, I mean, I guess, living out here where I live in this rural part of southern Ohio, you'd never know anything in the world is going on around here. It's just life is normal. We don't see any protesters. We don't have riots. We don't have people blowing things up, burning things down, taking out statues. We don't have... You'd never know. If you didn't have a TV, a radio, a newspaper, internet, if you just didn't have any of that communication, and you were just running around here in the county I live in, you would never know any of this is going on. So, I mean, it's in these certain places across the country run by liberals. That's what it is. And you would think at some point people will be wise enough that they would look at the situation and go, you know what? When you look at these blue states run by liberal Democrats, they're a mess. The cities that they run are a mess. The counties they run are a mess. The states that they run are a mess. I mean, people have to wake up at some point, I think. But if they don't, the only thing I can say is, there's a reason why many of us live in the places where we live. I mean, there's nothing I can do about the fact that, these things are happening in Chicago and Atlanta and New York and all these places, Minneapolis. Nothing I can do about it. No, I don't live there. It's not my problem. I wish it weren't happening, but, I don't live there for a reason. If I did live in any of these states, I would be moving to the rural areas. I would never live in any of these cities run by lefties. For a lot of reasons. Number one, the taxes. But just, they're a mess. You go into any city run by a liberal Democrat, and it's a mess. High taxes, high crime, poor schools, drugs, poverty. I mean, it's a mess. I don't want to go. I don't want to live my life in a place like that. And I'm just very fortunate and thankful that I am where I am. And until people wake up, I mean, I don't know what you do. I really don't. I mean, you can't force people to see the light. You can't force people to wake up and realize. I mean, you would think after people living in these liberal Democrat-run cities for decades and decades and decades and having nothing but failure, more crime, more poverty, more lack of everything. I mean, you would think at some point a light bulb would go on and they would vote for a Republican or something better than a liberal Democrat. But they don't. I mean, I don't know how to figure this out. I really don't. And it's not my job. So there it is. In addition to what's going on in Atlanta, where they're calling out the National Guard, you also have Chicago having an incredibly violent weekend. 70 people shot, 14 dead. You have Mayor Lightfoot there. She's a big nitwit, is this Keisha Bottoms. And Trump has offered her federal help. He has written her 2 letters now, saying, please, just ask. I'll come in and help. Not a peep out of her. She just allows it to go on. I mean, the crime rate in New York is just out of control. And Cuomo and Comrade de Blasio, they can't figure out what to do, even though they have a perfect model for what to do. Rudy Giuliani came in and fixed the mess that the previous liberal Democrats had created. He fixed it in 1 term and then got reelected by a handy majority, by a big majority, a Republican. You would think, gee, you remember last time we brought in a Republican and he fixed all these problems? But New Yorkers, I mean, maybe they like this kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe they like living in this kind of crap. I don't know. But like I say, these liberal cities are beginning to look like the Wild West. And unfortunately, the law-abiding citizens in most of these blue cities are pretty much unarmed. I mean, trying to own guns in some of these blue cities. I mean, they have so many restrictions. You can't even be armed to defend yourself. And the cops ain't coming. Especially now, you've pissed them all off. I mean, this is why a lot of these crime rates are rising in a lot of these blue cities. The cops are basically done. Many of them are retiring, they're quitting, or they're just calling it in, man. They're driving around in their car all day, watching crime happen. Oh, you see that mugging over there? Oh, well, no problem. You see that drug deal going down? See that prostitute over there? No problem. Not our problem anymore. I mean, that's how the cops are at this point. I don't blame them. Why would you as a cop, after suffering so much abuse over the past several weeks, why would you bother? I mean, the only thing you're going to do by trying to stop the crime is probably get, blacklisted, blackballed, fired, prosecuted, God knows what. Yeah, I'd do the same thing. I'd collect my paycheck and drive around in my car all day with the windows up, watching my six. That's what I'd be doing if I was a cop, and it's pretty much what they are doing. I mean, the cops are done, and I don't blame them. Not around here where I live, though. They're still doing police work like they do every day. You break the law around here, you're probably going to get caught. And they'll put the handcuffs on you and take you to jail. And if you cop an attitude with one of them, they'll smack you across the chops. And most of the citizens around here will say, well, he probably deserved it. So, if you're a cop, there's plenty of places around this country where you can go and be a cop and you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, these blue cities where cops are being abused, I don't blame them. So we've had what, 10 dead kids in the last 3 weeks? Dozens of people killed, murdered, injured. I mean, it's a mess, and look where it's all happening. We have the Minneapolis City Council now rethinking their plan. Of course, we know they voted up there to literally defund the police. But now, because they've had such a major increase since passing that measure, major increases in drugs, prostitution, property damage, car theft, and everything else down the line, crime across the board skyrocketing up there since they passed this measure to defund the cops. And now what are they doing? They're rethinking that. They're rethinking it up in Minneapolis. They oh, well, maybe this defund the cops thing that we just passed ain't such a damn good idea. Crime rates going up, 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 up. All quiet here in Southern Ohio. Well, we did have a little town in Ohio called Newton Falls. We had the city manager up there make a proclamation. I like this. He made a proclamation making his city a sanctuary city for historical figures like Washington, Lincoln, and Jefferson. Yes, that's right. A sanctuary city for historical figures of our past. And he lists quite a long list of people like Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, Madison, all these guys. So there you go. City manager in Newton Falls, Ohio gets it. He gets it. And more. This is exactly how you fight back against this. More Republican mayors and governors need to come out and declare their cities and states sanctuary cities for good, law-abiding cops, law-abiding citizens, historical figures, private property, gun rights. I create sanctuary cities for everything under the sun, as long as it falls under the umbrella of freedom. Sanctuary cities for freedom. Let's see how many people flock there. I bet quite a few. And leave the liberal Democrats to themselves. If they want to destroy themselves, let them. Just don't bring it here. Create sanctuary cities across the country for conservative principles, and let's see how things shake out at the end. I'm good with that. We had a very interesting interview with Svetlana Lokhova, interviewed by John Solomon. I don't think she watches my videos. I don't think so. But she said, while being interviewed, talking to John Solomon in this interview, she said, literally, in this interview, that she believes that Halper and Steele, Stefan Halper, the fat man, and Christopher Steele were working together. Halper and Steele were working together. Just as I said on a video a couple of days ago, I believe that Halper was at least a source for Christopher Steele, possibly his primary subsource. Wouldn't doubt that at all. And that would be epic. But I have no doubt, as I said in the video 2 or 3 days ago when I made the same suggestion, that there's too many things here, coincidental things between Halper and Steele, to pretend that these guys didn't know each other. I mean, they run around in the same circles with the same people in the same places. They have the same goals, working on the same thing. Nearly impossible to believe that Halper and Steele weren't in some way communicating, either directly or indirectly. And we, of course, know that Christopher Steele was working essentially for the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Yeah, there was a couple middlemen in between, a law firm and Confusion GPS, but ultimately the money that was going into Steele's bank account was coming out of Hillary Clinton's bank account. Hillary was essentially paying Christopher Steele, going through 2 middlemen to do it, but essentially she was the one paying Steele. He was working for Hillary. Christopher Steele was working for Hillary. So if Christopher Steele was working for Hillary, and if Svetlana Lokhova is correct, and Steele and Halper were working together, then it's not that much of a stretch to suggest that Steele and Halper were working for Clinton. What if we find out that Halper was also working for Clinton, being paid by a couple of middlemen? Maybe he was also being paid by Confusion GPS on behalf of Hillary Clinton. And Lokhova tells John Solomon that she believes that Halper and Steele were making it look like they had intelligence coming from different sources, when in fact they were the same lies recycled. Yes, as we talked about Trubnikov. Steele's telling Kathleen Kvalik that Trubnikov is one of his sources. Well, we know that Halper had been having close contact communication with Trubnikov at least 2 times in 2016, and had bragged about it to Papaglopoulos while he was in London. Is that coincidence too? I don't think so. Too many coincidences. Absolutely no doubt in my mind, as Lokhova is saying, at the very least, Halper and Steele. And keep in mind, the FBI paid Christopher Steele payments 13 times. They made him 13 payments. And apparently he was working for the FBI, which means they were probably paying him too. Man, it's starting to look very, very bad. I mean, I'm absolutely 100% certain we are going to find out that Halper and Steele, at the very least, know each other. I mean, they were working on the same program here. At least, at the very least, knew each other. We're likely getting information from the same source. And I think that there's at least a 50-50 shot that Halper was one of, if not, Steele's primary sources. And like I said, if that turns out to be the case, it is going to hit the fan. That blows this conspiracy wide open, because Halper was being paid by the government. So was Steele. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.